Welcome to TrulyFit.
Joe, thank you so much for joining the TrulyFit Podcast, round 2 here. Remind my listeners who have not heard you in the round 1 who you are and what it is that you do in the health and fitness and now the more business and marketing standpoint from the day-to-day.
Yeah, super excited to be here again, Steve, so thanks for having me. My name's Joe. I am trained as a physical therapist. I have my doctorate in physical therapy. I've been practicing for almost 10 years. I also have my certification, certified strength and conditioning specialist, CrossFit level 1, board certified in orthopedics, all these things. I still am practicing PT part-time. I also coach CrossFit a couple of days a week, and I also do some personal training. So lots of things, but I am now also, I guess you want to consider me like a YouTube channel manager / video editor, different names there, and just been doing that for mainly health and fitness professionals.
Was this more of a passion project? Did you not expect to go down this path? How did that start? Because somebody with all of your credentials, and especially someone who can just, from a physical therapist standpoint, most people think, well, I can just get a job anywhere and work 9 to 5. Why do I want to break out on my own and sort of do something that is much more entrepreneur-like? How did this all come about?
Yeah, so in 2020, my wife and I moved to Maine, which is where her family is, just to be closer to family. We weren't really where our family was. At that time, I started my own kind of like PT business, personal training, focusing on the golf fitness niche. And then in 2021, 2022, I said, I'm going to kind of dial down on one social platform, which I decided was YouTube. I really liked it. So I just spent all of the time learning all the things, doing all my own videos, all my editing, creating thumbnails, making the videos. But like I said, in that time, I just spent a whole bunch of time learning about YouTube, how it works, what's best practice, what's not, what you shouldn't be doing. And then that pretty much transformed. I'm in like an online business group with that's led by another physical therapist. And she saw every week we can share our own things, like sell our own stuff for the most part, like not to spam the group essentially. And I always just posted my YouTube videos that I was posting weekly and just said, hey, if you know a golfer in your life or whoever can benefit from this, feel free to share it. And so she noticed I was like the only person doing YouTube and was like, hey, can you present to the group on YouTube? You're the one that seems to know about it the most. Can you do that? And I was like, yeah, sure. And she was like, after we were done, she was like, I want you to do my YouTube stuff for me. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And then in all of this, basically, just as most people probably know, as like a PT or anyone who kind of works at a location or is dependent on a person as a personal trainer or a PT, there were points where I was, at one point I had COVID and I wasn't working, had to be out, but I felt relatively fine. And I was like, I'm just not making any money right now. What can I do to also make some money? And so this kind of like helps spur that as well, where I can still work from home and kind of be a little bit flexible. And if I have to be home for whatever reason, I now have a 9-month-old daughter. So sometimes, you're home with your kid when they're sick, even though it's still hard to get some work done.
Oh, yeah. But
like even when they're taking naps, right, you can squeeze in something potentially versus not making any money at all. So that kind of spurred that. And she has a relatively large social following, and she just recommends me to a lot of people, which I'm super grateful for. But that's essentially how this started.
Yeah, I love that because even in like intra-industry, I notice, and I try to beat this into a lot of personal trainers' heads, like don't let compliments roll off your back. If somebody is like asking you to do something and they're telling you you're good at this, you might not like quite understand that you have a special skill set yet because it wasn't that difficult for you to hone that craft. But it is, right? You have to listen to those people, right? So it's like the yoga person who is like so great at headstands, and everyone asks like, how'd you do that headstand? How'd you do that headstand? But for some reason, she niches out into like breath work because she loves it. It's like, yeah, I get that you love this, but like everyone's telling you do a great headstand. So like you should specialize in headstands. Like eventually you have to come to the thing that you do best and that people want. I always say, like, from a business standpoint, you don't create a market. You find out what the market like dictates and you adjust accordingly. And basically you didn't have to do anything. The market came to you. They said, hey, like we realize you have a different skill set than other people and we're going to ask you to help us. And I think that's great that you just said, okay, well, I guess this is the route I'm going. People need this. I enjoy it. I've learned it and I'm ready to pass this knowledge on to someone else.
Yeah, no, it's been super great. I really love YouTube and I love doing all this, and anyone who spends time on it, there's a ton of analytics, and it's almost when we're doing videos for this other PT, she, you know, you get to see how it's doing, and I'm kind of a data nerd and I just look at all the stuff all the time, and we basically just compare it to like gambling in Vegas for the most part. Like there's so many things can happen and lead to certain things. And just like, for me, it's just a fun game. I almost feel like you can never perfect it, but you're always trying to get better.
All right, we'll start with convincing me. So I already know your answer to this question. If I was a new fitness professional, or if I was right now a fitness professional, and I was going to say, I'm going to dedicate all of my energy and efforts to one platform, it sounds like you're going to pick YouTube. Convince me why I would use YouTube over Instagram, over Facebook, over a newer platform, over TikTok. Why would I use YouTube? What is it giving me that the other platforms don't?
If I'm gonna go with that, which I would say the biggest thing is that YouTube is a search engine. It's the second largest search engine in the entire world, and it's owned by the first number one search engine in the entire world, which is Google, right? Your videos can be resurfaced years later or be shown years later. Whereas I don't use TikTok, but like on Instagram, you make a post and they're obviously pushing reels. Maybe if your reel goes off, it might get shown maybe like 2 weeks later for the most part. But generally speaking, it's probably only lasting maybe a couple of days, maybe a week at most for the most part, right? And then it's dead. And then you're making more and more reels, whatever it is, your posting frequency, and then people don't see them again, right? Very rarely do people go to your page probably and scroll down and look for a specific post. And a lot of times people will save a post, right? And most of the time people probably don't actually go back and look at them, to be honest, right? I mean, just think about your own habits. I do it all the time. I save posts and I never really go back to them. But I think the biggest thing is that you can potentially create quote unquote evergreen content. Just because it's on YouTube doesn't mean it's going to get seen, but it has the potential to years later. If you do all the things right and it provides a lot of value and people seem to like it for whatever reason, a video that is 10 years old can still be seen today. And then I think the other thing, a lot of people do know this, it's not super simple and it varies, but you can make money via YouTube with ads and whatnot. And that's not really the same in terms of like Instagram or TikTok or some of these other platforms, although it is possible.
My most successful YouTube video, mind you, I've never tried to really use YouTube as a platform, is me hopping on the camera after a surgery and going down the things I wish I would have known prior to my double inguinal hernia surgery. And I don't know, it's got, maybe tens of thousands of views and people comment on it like, thank you so much for this information. This is great. And it's because I'm sure people are typing in something to the extent of like, pre-op inguinal hernia surgery, right? Something to that extent. And like you said, it is a search engine, a video-based search engine. Whereas in Instagram, I don't ever search hashtags, but I certainly don't ever type more than one word in. The videos that I get shown are simply targeting me. I don't search on there for videos. So I do think, like you said, having that evergreen process and it's more importantly, it's evergreen educational. And that's the space we're in, is an educational space where we're trying to teach people and help people do things. So I think it's very fitting for personal trainers, especially personal trainers who have good information. Now, if you're just somebody who's getting naked, okay, maybe that's not the platform for you. Maybe Instagram's a better platform because it's a visual platform. But if you actually think that you're passing on good information, I do understand what you're saying. It's the search engine aspect's going to help out.
Yeah, I think the other main thing with that too is that in terms of being found and being shown, like obviously YouTube has its own algorithm, and what you watch in the past and search into Google and type and watch into YouTube will end up surfacing more stuff to you. But the fact that you can present educational material, and again, most reels, if you think about TikTok or Instagram, again, most of the time, they were originally 60 seconds or less. Now I think you could do more. But generally speaking, most like reels or TikToks, if they're longer than 15, 20 seconds, a lot of time people are just swiping away or they're not watching the whole thing. A lot of times you can't even get all of those analytics. But most of the time, if you're making a 60-second reel, and you look at your analytics, most people aren't going to probably watch the whole thing. Whereas, and well, to go back to that real quick, is how much information can you actually give that's valuable to someone in 20 seconds? It is possible, right? But at the end of the day, it's really difficult. You need to be a pro at being able to give value within 20 seconds, right? Whereas YouTube, you have a much longer opportunity to do that. And I think people, when they go to YouTube and they're searching for something, or even if they're just browsing and something comes up, they have a different intent when you go to YouTube versus Instagram/TikTok seems to be more kind of mindless scrolling, kind of like entertainment almost. Whereas when people go to YouTube, some people still go there for entertainment, but if they have an intent in terms of being educated, they're okay with sitting in front of a 3, 4, 20-minute video if it's helpful.
I also think the ratio, again, I have no data on this. I'm sure you may have data on this. The ratio of like a like or a full watch of a video to a then follow, right? Then getting that person to potentially be a customer or whatever you want to say, like a long-term follower. The ratio is way better on YouTube. I have other companies, and one of my companies is a registry. I put out a reel on one of my other companies that got over 2 million views. In that time, I added 2 followers. I can't even directly correlate or connect, right? I don't know if there was a causal relationship. Those followers might have not even been the people who watched that. But I had a reel with 2 million views, and that only gave me potentially, at most, 2 more followers in that 2-week time, right? Whereas in YouTube, I noticed like maybe I'll get 100 views, and then I'll get like 7 or 8 people subscribe to the channel, right? So like I feel like you can't beat those sorts of ratios because it makes sense. You're really associating me with that video as opposed to the reel. Sometimes it's just like a character almost.
Yeah, I don't know if I have any specific data in terms of like views correlated to subscribers, but I do find that well, most people are now saying that subscribers on YouTube are kind of a vanity metric, because before, when you would log into YouTube, you would get served your subscriptions, like whoever you were subscribed to. If they have new videos, those would get put in front of you first. Now that's not the case. In fact, most of the time it's not. It's more maybe videos you haven't seen. It might be from people that you are subscribed to, if that's who you watch a lot of. But you're also going to get served other videos, right? So subscribers, in terms of like you as a creator, they're great, especially if you're trying to be part of the YouTube partner program and you're trying to grow them, or just create an overall community, whatever it may be. I think those are still helpful. It's kind of more of a vanity metric now, people are saying. Obviously, it still plays a role. But at the end of the day, when someone subscribes to you, they are more likely to take a look at your content. And if it is valuable, right, be shown that. But I would say I do agree in the fact that, at least in my experience, with my YouTube videos, when videos seem to have way more views, I end up getting more subscribers. And you can see where they're coming from too, versus, again, like I just have found recently on Instagram, my reels have just overall, like engagement and views have just been down for whatever reason. I mean, I don't know what it is, but I'm not going to complain about it.
Well, I mean, there's bots on every platform, but it looks like the IG Reels, again, this is just from a pure novice technological standpoint, it looks like there's a lot of bot views, even likes, right? You're looking at these accounts who are liking and clicking on these things. They have 0 posts, 2 followers, and they're following 6 people or something. There's a lot of that, and it's because they're trying to keep up with TikTok, and they know that the likelihood that you will continue to post reels is somewhat based upon how successful you're being, which makes sense, right? We all want to continue to be successful in something, and if we're not, we'll give it up. So they, when someone sees like, oh, look, I only have 250 followers, but I got 3,000 views on this reel, they're more likely to then continue to put out those reels. And then if you're, we don't live in a vacuum. If you're spending more time on Instagram Reels, you're spending less time on TikTok, right? So all these things are competing. So I do get how that plays into hand. But I want to ask you, because you just mentioned how YouTube has changed a little bit. They're showing you other things outside of maybe just your subscribers. What else has changed in YouTube? If someone hasn't logged on in 2 years, how would you describe maybe changes that YouTube has made?
Yeah, I think in general, the biggest one that has changed, because this was in like 2018, I think, 2017, 2018, it's called Adpocalypse. Most people were being shown videos that were basically clickbait. Most people think of YouTube and think of clickbait when they look at thumbnails for the most part. As soon as you get into the video, it's not even what you thought it was about, which isn't true anymore because all that mattered was the clicks, basically. So they've changed their algorithm to be more about, are things getting clicked, but are people actually sticking around and watching your video, right? And then are you satisfying that viewer? So there's really not any more quote unquote clickbait. I mean, there probably still is, but you're definitely going to get penalized as a creator. So those things don't get surfaced, basically. The other main thing is they have obviously ventured into short form vertical video to compete with Instagram and TikTok. They're called YouTube Shorts. The other main thing that they're really pushing right now are podcasts. They are pushing podcasts hard. They hired someone specifically just for podcasts. They've hired people specifically just to have their podcast on YouTube. I think they're going to end up trying to be, they're trying to be the one and only place that people go to for all kinds of entertainment, whether it's music, podcasts, video, TV, whatever it is. Those are the major changes that I would say have occurred within the last few years.
Yeah, those are pretty big changes. I know too, it seems, you could tell me if I'm wrong here, a lot of the videos needed to be glitzy and glam on YouTube. It seemed like more so than the other platforms, right? So something like TikTok really not only allows, but almost promotes people being more, I'll use the term raw. And, YouTube always seemed more glitzy and glam, but I don't know if that's still the case. I do see a lot of people on there who are just saying, I'm just going to go on there and host a live podcast, or I'm going to go on there. Like I've seen people just turn the camera on for like 4 hours and just talk, and they have 10,000 people watching them. So I think that's a big benefit for YouTube, that they're not so like, I need to have like a professional like videographer and editor to go about this. Is that the case?
Yeah, I would say that's true, right? It's going to depend on your niche, which again, most of us are going to be more in the educational realm. If you think about like refined videos and kind of really entertaining, quick pace, the first person that comes to mind who's right now like the most famous YouTuber is Mr. Beast. He kind of does kind of crazy up large scale things. If you've never watched a video, just type it in basically, and there'll be a ton. His are very fast paced, very highly edited, lots of stuff happening. And like you said, I would say more for our educational space, and for most people now they're allowing you to be more raw, and that's what people want, honestly, when they're looking for that kind of stuff. For the most part, it doesn't have to be overly edited, highly glamorized. I think a lot of people think about Alex Hormozy and kind of see his videos, and they're the same kind of thing. They're also educational, but they're highly edited, very fast paced, lots of like attention resets. Things are popping up and on and off the screen. Again, when you're trying to educate someone on something, whether that's like a hip flexor stretch or like how to get stronger, a lot of people don't want that. You do need to have like attention resets to keep people's attention, but when it's that fast paced, most people are probably going to get annoyed. So really keeping it bare bones for the most part is probably more so the way to go, which is super helpful, right? Which means way less work. It's easier on you. Or if you're hiring out, it's easier on that person too. Like shouldn't necessarily cost you a ton.
Do you know anything about I guess you would say the YouTube like live, not necessarily strategy, but how it works? Meaning like sometimes I'm into cryptocurrency. So sometimes I'll like watch these guys who just like sit on the computer for 4 hours, and people will be typing in and comment, and they're just running their own like live talk show essentially. Is that becoming bigger? Are there other competing platforms? Can anybody do this? Do you need some sort of like special setup or YouTube privileges?
I'm pretty sure almost anyone can do it. There might be a subscriber minimum. I think it's pretty low at this point. Before there was a good amount. I want to say if there is one, it might only be like 100 subscribers or maybe 50 if there is one. Typically speaking, sometimes you may or may not be able to do it from your phone. It depends. Again, I think there's some minimums on that potentially in terms of like maybe operating system or again, subscribers. For the most part, I don't think you need that big of a setup if you're going to just use like your laptop with a webcam for the most part. Obviously, you can get very intense and highly integrated in terms of how much stuff you have to make it kind of more of a show. But yeah, people just kind of go on, like you said, kind of just have their own like talk show at this point, and people are on and watching and commenting and doing all kinds of stuff, right? I think that's part of like, if you want to create a community, the first person that comes to mind, I don't know her at all, but just listen to podcasts with her. Her name's Emily Baker. She's a lawyer. She switched, one of her like favorite things to do is like pop culture, right? So one thing that like really set her off in terms of like creating a community, she'll go on and talk about celebrities and what's going on in the world with their law and stuff like that. Like when Kanye released all of his contracts, she broke it down, right? And that is super helpful to people who have no idea about law but are interested into pop culture, right? She did all live streaming of the entire Johnny Depp Amber Heard case, right? So she had tons of people watching along with her, asking questions. She's breaking things down as it's happening. Like, talk about one heck of a niche, but people love her. She had like thousands upon thousands of people watching live. I think she had more people watching her live stream of the court case and her like commentary than like people on whatever it was streamed on. I don't even know, which is wild. And it's a really good way, again, if you're trying to get into like the YouTube partner program, to like, you need to get into the partner program to get money from ads. You need to meet X amount of subscribers, which is 1,000, and you need 4,000 hours of public watch time within the last 365 days. So every person that's watching that's a great way to like build up watch time. But there are people who do gaming, right? People who just stream games and then playing. Basically, and you asked, is there another platform that does this? It's basically Twitch. I don't know much about Twitch, but it was, again, mainly for gamers who are streaming their gameplay, and people can watch along and give you money, and people can give money if you're, again, in the partner program, support you just for doing it and just being a part of the community, all kinds of stuff, which is pretty wild, but also really cool if you're trying to develop that community, whether it's on Twitch or YouTube, whatever it may be.
Yeah. And I started thinking about the trainers who want to just build a library of workouts or exercises, and how good YouTube is for something like that. Right. So forget about just like being on camera, talking about, where the short head of the bicep attaches to or something, right? Like if you're like, hey, I'm going to do this quick 30-minute HIIT workout, and you just like, you build all these workouts and you have these libraries. I know for me, if I don't get the chance to like go to a yoga class because I have a 22-month-old and, she's sleeping, I have to stay in the house. The first thing I do is go on YouTube and type in like beginner yoga or 30-minute yoga. And that's what I do. So you have to think that that's only getting bigger, that more people are going to be using that to do those sorts of things, especially now that online virtual training is all the rage now. And I think it almost seems like not having some sort of foothold on YouTube, really on every platform. That's what I always say. Like if someone searches for you and maybe they're only looking on one platform, to me, it's such a mistake to not have some footprint on that platform. Now, maybe if you have a reason you don't want to be on that platform, right? Maybe like it's a TikTok thing, so it's like security, privacy. I get that. But if to like not be on LinkedIn doesn't make any sense, right? Like I don't need to have a full profile on there and be on it every day. But even if I have links on my LinkedIn that lead to my major thing, right? So Joe, for example, would have all of his links directed back to his YouTube because that's his main platform, right? I would have mine maybe back to my IG, something to that extent. So I think it's a mistake to not have some sort of footprint in all of the socials, and especially now it seems like as a fitness professional, YouTube especially.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I really think, if someone's going to dial in on one, just focus on one before you start expanding on others in terms of like work and all the posts that you're doing. But like you said, once you have, you think about your handle on Instagram, right? Or whatever, and you want to claim that one and you want it to be the same across all platforms. Like you said, go to all the things, right? Go to LinkedIn, go to Twitter, go to TikTok. And if you want to have that on all those platforms, but you don't necessarily want to be active on all of them, then you should do it for sure. And then, like you said, have all of those ones point to your main channel. Also, let it point to your website, and hopefully you have one along with an email list, because on all of these things, you don't own any of it. Any of it can go away instantly. Someone can lock you out of your account. Someone can hack you, right? That's always the thing. And I always recommend people to have that, because you don't own YouTube, you don't own Instagram, and they can just delete your channel, get rid of your account for whatever reason, even if you didn't do anything wrong, right? It could just be gone.
Yeah. There's I talk about that a lot. We You're not paying for anything. They don't owe you anything. They could rip away those things in a second, or they could just change the business model, right? So tomorrow, Instagram could say like, hey, we're not going to do any likes, and we're not going to show anybody how many people are following you. So it's like, okay, well then that's the whole shtick there, right? It's like, that's how you gain your notoriety, is by looking how many people are following you. And if they don't show that number, then who are you now? You're nobody. You just wasted your whole time building up one platform, and it was ripped away from you. And then from a monetary standpoint, that's going to affect you as well. So I think it's important to have your feet, your toes dipped into the water and all the different socials. And I talk to a lot of podcasters who are not on YouTube, and I think it's a big mistake, and they go, well, no one watches it. They just listen. I go, yeah, no one watches mine either, but I don't know when that could change. And also, like, the visual component of the podcast is you could then use those clips across all of the platforms, right? So then I can now clip that and put it on Instagram and put it on LinkedIn and put it on YouTube Shorts and put it on all these things. And you don't know what's going to go viral next. So to me, it's like, it's such a mistake for people to say, oh, people are just listening to me, they're not watching me. No, they eventually need to see your face in order for you to grow and put that voice to your face. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, video's bigger and bigger, right? It's apparent. Instagram changed from just a still image picture sharing platform to mainly now being video, right? Video is dominating, and it's probably going to continue to dominate. There may be a switch at some point, right, where it's going to go back to just pictures or whatever. But YouTube, the last I heard, is the second largest podcast where people discover and listen to podcasts. I don't know what the number one is off the top of my head. Could be Spotify, could be Apple, either one, right? The thing of it is that even so many people I've listened and talked to people who just turn on YouTube and then they go about their day, and it's on in the background. They're not even watching, right? So one, what difference does it make if they're watching you or not? If they do want to watch you, though, it is really helpful to see who you are. I mean, think about Joe Rogan, right? He has a visual podcast that people watch, and they're like 3-4 hours long. Some people will sit there and watch, some people don't. But like you said, the other advantage to that, at least in terms of podcasts, is you can now clip exciting parts of that, post them on other platforms, post them on YouTube Shorts, whatever it is, make shorter, longer form videos out of it. The possibilities are endless. If you just have your audio aspect of that, right, or you're not showing your face in terms of a podcast, you're now very limited what you can do. Not many people want to sit there and watch a little waveform on a screen. It's not very exciting.
Yeah, I do think there is a lot of people, like you said, who just want to kind of check in with it. So probably 80% of the podcast they're just listening to, but then here and there they look at the screen. Maybe it's when there's a big laugh and there's something kind of that connects you to being almost in the room, watching both people smile and laugh. So I think it is important to give people the option, right? Why not? First of all, from a technological standpoint, it's not a huge extra step to go ahead and do this, right? So you're not talking about hours and hours and hours of work, especially if you're a podcaster who already knows how to edit. It's fairly quickly to be able to put this up and to clip it everywhere else. So I want you to. I always ask people to do this from like a personal trainer standpoint. So it's going to be interesting to see how you describe it from a YouTube manager standpoint. Walk me through your video experience from the second you're about to film, your thought process, to how you film. Are you using the phone? Are you using a computer? To then do you edit immediately? Do you put it up? Walk me through your whole process.
Okay. This is what I always recommend to everyone. You want to think about your title and your thumbnail first before you do absolutely anything else. So you have a video idea that comes to your mind, right? Whatever it is. Let's talk about, let's just say why you should deadlift. Something along, I'm just like thinking, just like getting stronger with a deadlift. Let's just say that. Okay. That's your like video idea. Obviously it needs to be a little bit more intriguing than that. So let's focus on, getting stronger. What's the appropriate rep range for strength with a deadlift? We'll just do that. So you want to think about what your title is and what your thumbnail is. You obviously want, I'm
going to quickly interject here. Sorry, quick question. Should it be a question? Is that an advantage?
It doesn't have to be a question. It could be anything, right? It could be like a day in your life of a personal trainer or like a virtual personal trainer, right? People are interested in that. Doesn't have to be a question per se.
Okay.
But you want to think about that because that's going to dictate what you talk about in your video. If you do it the other way around, one, now you're like struggling to come up with maybe a title and or a thumbnail, and you come up with something maybe that's great, but that doesn't really lend to what you already talked about in your video. So then you either have to re-record or like try to figure out how to fit your video. So if you can think about your title and your thumbnail first, and what I always recommend, there are 3 things that people want or like that get attention: curiosity, your audience's desire, or a pain point that they're trying to get away from for the most part. So if you can hit one of those things in your title and then complement your thumbnail with one of the other 2, that's going to make your video more clickable. Now, the reason why I say you really want to focus on this is because if your title and your thumbnail don't create intrigue and people don't click on it, you can have the best video in the world. You could be the smartest person providing the most value, but if no one clicks on it because your title and your video aren't good, doesn't matter. No one's ever going to watch it. So once you have your title and your thumbnail, I generally come up with my title, almost exactly what I want, and then I have an idea of my thumbnail. From there, I also think about the hook. So just like on Instagram, as soon as you're like going through and you have a reel, you're trying to hook someone. If you don't hook someone, at least on Instagram, within like the first 3 seconds, most people might swipe away, right? You have a little bit longer on YouTube where you might have like 30 seconds or less, but generally speaking, you want to get right into the content, but you want to hook them, right? So if we go back to deadlifting, what's the appropriate, rep range to get strong with a deadlift? You could say something along the lines of like, there's a lot of info out there in terms of like, what's the appropriate rep range? I want to make sure you're doing the right thing. So when you're doing deadlifts, then just go right into your content, right? That's really quick off the top of my head. Maybe not the best, but you get the point.
Yeah.
You don't want
something like all the things you've learned about deadlifting, chances are they're wrong. Next, we're going to talk about in this video why you should be doing something completely different than you already are.
Exactly. Something along those lines.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then get right into the content. Most people probably think about YouTube in the old way of like, then after that, people will be like, hi, my name's Steve. I'm a personal trainer. I've been training for 30 years, whatever it is, right? People don't want to do that.
Nobody
They'll
cares.
skip over it or they'll just leave your video. Like, don't even worry about that. Have a text box that pops up that says who you are, or just be like, hey, I've been working with people doing deadlifts for the last 7 years. My name's Steve, and I just want to make sure you're doing the right thing. And then just get right into it. Like, that's a quick enough way to introduce yourself. And then from there, you do all of your value, your content of your video, just like you normally would, whatever that is. So you plan that hook, and then basically from there, this gets easier once you have more videos, but I also think about where to send them next before I even film as well. So after you talk about, rep ranges for gaining strength with a deadlift, maybe you want to talk about, maybe your goal isn't to get strong, but you actually want to build some muscle. Check this video out, right? That's the ending of your hook. So what I always tell people is like, you don't want to finish your story, or like you could send them to like, even though we just talked about getting strong with a deadlift, you want to make sure you're doing it with proper form. So check out this video here, right? There's a million deadlift videos with proper form, but if they like what you just said, they might go watch your next video, right? And that's a good sign to YouTube to keep people, that you're satisfying the viewer, basically, that you keep them on the platform. Just like any other platform's goal is to keep that person on. So if you can keep them watching for longer, especially your videos, that's a good sign. Then once you have all of that, then you actually go ahead and film. So then you film your content. I always recommend batching. So you don't necessarily have to edit right away as soon as you're done filming. I always try to get a couple of title ideas with thumbnails, a couple of video ideas with all that stuff ready to go. In terms of like scripting, I don't script out word for word. Usually I do for my hook just to make sure I have it down. But after that, I usually just have like outline points of what I want to make sure I hit. And then just try to hit those in my video. And then from there, go film all those videos, have a change of clothes, make sure everything's set, ready to go. Film all of them. Then you have everything, and then try to edit in batches too, and then go from there. That's pretty much the typical content creation strategy for the most part. Yeah.
Now, when you put those, now then I guess the next step is here, and I have a lot going on in my brain here, but I want to sort of finish this. I want to complete this. So when you put those videos up then, right, you put them into YouTube. I think maybe a confusing part is for some people is like, there are a lot of things to be filled out now. So as in an Instagram, let's say reel or video, basically you write some quick content, that maybe a 20-word description, and then you send out 65 different hashtags, and boom, you send the video out. But in YouTube, there seems to be a little bit more to fill out, right? So almost like when you have a website, it's like a meta description and all these different tags. How exactly do you go about that process, and is that more daunting than you can describe?
It'll get easier over time. For me, it's easier. So right, you have your title, which is, again, hopefully you're hitting like a good keyword in there. Again, so like deadlifts, getting stronger with deadlifts, back to our example, something like that. You have a description. That's pretty much where obviously you would describe the video, but that's another place where you put a lot of other stuff. Really, you shouldn't spend too much time describing the video. Just give them another intriguing thing about the video, almost like another hook, exactly like what you did, that basically describes that. But in there, you want to have your other parts to point people to, like connecting with you on Instagram or your website, or maybe you have a lead magnet or something like that to get them onto your email list. That's where you want to put all of that stuff. The other thing in there is like chapters. They call them video chapters. They're basically timestamps. So if you talk about, again, back to our example of like appropriate rep ranges. Let's say we talk about that at minute 1, you write that down, you give it a title for that, like appropriate rep ranges. You can then to say, if you talked about inappropriate rep ranges, you start talking about that at minute 2, put those in. That just helps the viewer find where that stuff is, because you can see that on the playhead when someone's watching the video. And then after that, there's a lot of other things too. Like you have tags, you can put in subtitles, all of this stuff, which helps just give more data to YouTube to kind of figure out who to send this video to, if that makes sense. So there is a little bit more stuff to do. It really shouldn't take you, it might take you a little bit, again, just initially to get started, but once you get into it, it's not that difficult. And there's a lot of like presets that you can set, just like title language, video language, all that stuff that you can already preset in your settings to be English or whatever language it is for you. Which makes life a little bit easier.
Yeah, I want to go back to a point you made, and I know you actually made a small video about this on your Instagram. I'm sure it's a YouTube short as well, about how people take too long to get to the point. So, I watch a lot of golf videos on YouTube, right? That's my number one thing I do on YouTube, is just like watch golf videos, right? So I might type in like 4-iron stinger shot, and you go to the golf video and you click on it, and they'll show a picture of the guy doing the, quick video of the guy doing it. And then he goes into a 40-second like intro about like, hey guys, this is who I am, and I make videos like this all the time. So please hit the like and subscribe button. You'll see that I do videos like this 2 times a week. And he goes into this tirade, and then I'm out of the video. I'm on to the next guy. I don't care how good his information was on hitting that 4-iron stinger. I want to see him do it, right? And I probably would have subscribed had he just shown me information, right? Because I know that this guy's going to be getting to the point and saving me time. So explain to us how important that is. And also it seems like maybe a new transition, because I don't think everyone's doing that yet.
It's definitely not. I think a lot of people who are used to doing that have maybe larger followings still do that because that's worked for them in the past. And they already have larger followings, right? So they kind of have that notoriety, those subscribers. But like you said, they may not be growing as well. We don't see any of that stuff, right? So like you said, you were ready to click off and just like get away from the video. I think most people these days want that information, especially when you're searching for something and you're trying to get educated on it. Like the biggest example that I have for most people is like, let's say you have a clogged toilet, right? And it's overflowing and you don't know what to do, right? And you go to YouTube to search. You want to get to your content as quickly as possible, because this person doesn't care who you are. They don't care about anything. They want to know how to fix their overflowing toilet right now, right?
Yeah.
That's what people are doing, probably for all of our content for the most part, right? Like I'm sure we can be a little entertaining, and you should be, but most of our stuff is going to be educational. So people are going to be searching for the most part. Now, some of this stuff may just pop up and they may just find it from browse or suggested to. But for the most part, again, they want to get right into the content. And I think that's part of what's kind of transitioned from just all these short form vertical videos is like, show me the content right now, right? I don't necessarily think that we have shorter attention spans. We just want stuff as quickly as possible. And I know as personal trainers, everyone knows that everyone wants to lose 20 pounds yesterday, right? When we know that that's not the case. Yeah. Everyone wants that. Everyone wants that thing as quickly as possible. They want to be gratified right now.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point too. Saying, someone like Rick Shields, who's a golf guy that I follow, whatever, he's got probably 3.5 million followers. He can do this lengthy call to action in the front end because he's already has 3.5 million followers. But that doesn't mean that you should do what he's doing, right? Because that's, like you said, maybe outdated in some respects. And then also he's already earned like a showing and a respect where people are not going to necessarily click off him. But if nobody knows who you are, I think that's such a great point to, make each video like someone is under a time constraint, like their, bathroom is overflowing and you have to get to the information as quick as possible. And I think that people, unfortunately, are trying to copy the big guys when they don't have the clout yet to do that.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that people talk about that was part of the old way of part of that description, a lot of times if you go back and you listen or watch, and it's like, hey guys, welcome back to the channel, all the stuff. A lot of times people, this is the first time watching a video. Like they're not returning. They've never seen anything from you. That also goes to points of like, almost even if you make a series of videos, right? If you talk about like, let's say you just did your own personal transformation as a personal trainer, you lost a lot of weight and you just like recorded it, or you go back in time and talk about it, right? Or you're doing an experiment to lose and lean out, whatever it is, right? And you film yourself over a month. Having part 1, part 2, part 3, like welcome to part 2 of my video. A lot of people probably didn't see part 1, to be honest. Some people may have, but now they're already lost and they may also leave, right? Even though it's part of a series, you need to make every video a standalone video by itself, regardless if it is part of a series or not. Obviously, at some point in the video, you may talk about that it is part of a series. But if you watch a video and you're like, well, now I'm on part 2, I don't even know where we are. Someone may, if they're not that interested, they may try to find part 1, or they just may leave. They're like, well, whatever, I'm already out. Like, I don't know what part 1 is. I'm already behind. I'm not even going to worry about it. Let's click on to something else. So that's the other old thing that I think people are so used to seeing or doing that shouldn't be done.
I just put out an Instagram reel or a YouTube short. I'm really excited about it. It is 8 hours later. I check on it. It has 6 views. Now I'm angry and I decide to delete it. Tell me, Joe, why that's a bad idea.
Because one, I think it's always good to just leave it up as people can see, like as you go back and you remind people like, hey, this is where I started, right? You can remind yourself too, right? How maybe you're new at this and this isn't great, but YouTube is always testing your content. In fact, right now, what I'm seeing with myself, and what I've listened to a lot and some of my clients, especially with shorts, you put it out, you may get your normal amount of views or even less than normal. And it just kind of flatlines. Typically right now, honestly, for like a day. And then they retest it with people and they send it back out and it just like shoots up again when you like look at your graph for whatever reason. But this can happen way later. I had a video on my golf fitness channel that this was kind of before I decided to necessarily go right into golf fitness. So I made a plantar fasciitis video. It wasn't getting that many views to start off with whatsoever. And to share it a little bit, I don't necessarily recommend this. I was just going into Reddit. I found a subgroup in Reddit that was just all plantar fasciitis. I didn't like spam them. I legitimately tried to provide value. And I said, hey, if you want to learn more, check out this video. 3 months later, I like look at my channel, like tons of views. I'm like, what is happening? I go and look, there's this plantar fasciitis video. It's just like taking off. People, because it got resurfaced to the right person or people were watching it more, YouTube started pushing it out more, pushing it, right? And like if I decided to delete that when it wasn't doing so great, or I was like, you know what, this doesn't really fit my golf fitness niche anymore, I'm going to get rid of it, I wouldn't have gotten, I think it has 29,000 views.
I imagine it's going to continue growing,
Probably.
considering we are a few days past the Masters, and the most popular, I would say, athlete of all time withdrew from the Masters with plantar fasciitis. And to the extent where the announcers, I'm not blaming the announcers. It's not their specialty. They know so much about golf, but they didn't know how to pronounce it, right? So they're saying plantar fasciitis. They have no idea what's going on. They're like, it's something in his foot. So I imagine your video caught even more steam. And that's to say, you don't know what's going to be trending, right? 2 or 3 or 4 months later in the media that allows that to happen. There was a bunch of videos on, like, let's say right before the Ukraine Russia sort of war started, there was a professor who was describing sort of like on YouTube. He was just doing like a history lesson at like a small college, basically talking about the history of Ukraine, like when it developed as a country and their relations with Russia, and it had like a few thousand views. And then, the war starts and people want to know more about what's going on. And before you know it, it's like a 7 million watched YouTube video. So that's another reason, I think, to add to your point, where you don't know what's going to be trending and your topic could be evergreen down the road.
Yeah, there was someone, a YouTube like educator creator who just interviews other YouTube creators and their process. He does technology tutorials basically on different apps, platforms, whatever it may be. And he had already done one on Zoom. This was before the pandemic happened. And just like his Zoom video, I mean, he was doing relatively well before, but his Zoom video obviously took off, right? He had obviously no clue that the pandemic was going to happen or Zoom was going to be the platform for connecting with people. But because he had already done it, it just took off, right? I mean, it was shared by a ton of people, now viewed by a ton of people. Exactly to your point, you never know what's going to be trending eventually. Or again, YouTube may just take your video for whatever reason and start pushing it to people just to test it out. And it may connect with people at that time for whatever reason.
Are there metrics that you're more concerned with? You did mention earlier that you thought subscribers may be a little bit of what you considered a vanity metric. Are there other metrics that you are concerned with, or that other people should be concerned with, or do you think that maybe we should just take a step back, produce good content, and the metrics will come?
I do think definitely always still like taking a step back and maybe not necessarily getting too deep into your analytics is huge. Just, produce the content, especially if you haven't done this at all, right? You got to build up some videos just to get some data. There are things to think about though. So again, click-through rate is a big one. Click-through rate is basically your impressions and which means how many times your thumbnail was viewed on any part of the platform, and how many times it was clicked on in comparison to those impressions. So you get a percentage. Everyone always asks what's a good one. It really just depends on what's yours, right? Generally speaking, I would say if your click-through rate is like 7% or more, that's pretty good, to be honest. Now, again, it's going to depend on what your average is. Always just try to beat yourself is the big thing. That pertains more to your thumbnail and your title. So if that's relatively low or it's not doing so well, that means people just aren't clicking on your video. So there's something off there, right? Again, that's what's going to matter most to get people into your video. If that's low and people aren't clicking, you can have the best video in the world. Doesn't matter if no one's watching it. So if that's not doing so great, or it's not getting better, or it's getting worse, you need to like really start focusing and refining your technique in terms of creating your title and your thumbnail just to create more intrigue so people start clicking on it. That doesn't mean create clickbait though. The next thing would be probably average view percentage or average percentage viewed, whatever it's called. Now there's two things. There's like average watch duration, and then there's average percentage viewed. Average watch duration can really change depending on how long your videos are, right? So like if you put out a 40-minute video and people are watching, 5 minutes of that, which sounds not like a lot, but it probably is, honestly, 5 minutes of that. Yeah. But then let's say you start making less of that and you start making more 5-minute videos, and now people are only watching a minute and a half. You're going to see that go down, but that doesn't really make sense because your videos, there's not much more to watch, right? It's going to naturally go down. Where average percentage viewed is a little bit better because now we see how long people are staying on that specific video and how much of that video they're consuming, which is really important to YouTube in terms of continuing to share your content and that video and just other videos that you have. If people are staying on for a very long time and they're watching more of your video, that's a signal to YouTube that they really like it. You're doing something right, so they're going to share it more. So that's going to be a big one. Even with that, they show a graph in your video of like where people are watching more or leaving. You can see like an up and down kind of graph. And in that, you can also say like, all right, what am I doing here that's good? What am I doing here that's not so good? And try to refine now your technique inside your video when you're filming and editing and those kinds of things. And then lastly, you have to do a little bit of digging for this. There's so much analytics, but they don't always make it the best or the easiest in terms of like end screen clicked. So at the end of your video, you can put something that pops up on the screen, usually directing to someone to another video, which is usually the goal. Again, if you're trying to grow on YouTube and share stuff, you want people to stay on it and see more of your stuff. If you can get people all the way to the end to that point, that's huge. One, because that just means people are staying around. But two, if you can get them to click on another one of your videos, that's even better. I wouldn't necessarily worry about that as much as maybe the first two. Get good at getting people to click and watch your video, and then get good at getting people to stay around. Those are the two main things to start with.
Yeah, that's good information. And I was thinking as you were talking about getting people to stay around, sometimes, although you want to give people what they want right away, you can kind of slow drip it and then finish with the closer, right? So for example, if when I watch golf videos and a guy is saying like, hey, I'm going to show you, 3 different ways to hit a stinger. First, I'm going to show you the most difficult way, and then I'm going to show you the way that even amateurs can do it. I'm probably going to stick around, right? I'm going to watch the really difficult way that he does it, that I can't do it with a 2 iron. And then he's going to show me how he does it with, a 3 iron. And then he's going to finally show me how he does it with a 4 and a 5 iron, which is more likely something that I can do. So I do think there is something about thinking about your video. And if I do want these people to stay to the end, if I have a longer video, how am I showing them this? And how am I getting things prepared in an order in which I'm keeping it intriguing, but there's a climax, so to speak?
Yeah, and this is definitely tough. It's tough to do in general, and this is definitely a skill. You have to practice and get better at it, including myself. So doing something like that, exactly like you said, like I'm going to show you 3 ways to do this, one of which is, probably more advanced or more expert level, and all the way down to the amateur level, right? Probably most people who are watching are probably amateur for the most part, right? And if you save that to the end, people are gonna probably watch through, right? Yeah. Some techniques that people say at the beginning of their video is like, you want to stick around to the end to to learn this one trick or for the bonus tip, whatever it is, right? It's probably amazing at how many people don't actually like click forward ahead of the video, because now they're like in, right? You're hooked, right? The other thing to do is maybe work on telling a story, right? If we talked about, let's just stick with the stinger example, and like you're just doing it yourself, like, hey, I learned how to hit a stinger. We want to wait to the end to like finally show you how it clicked for me and what I figured out to make it work every single time, right? And so now you're telling a story of like of how that worked, but at the beginning it's not going to work, right? So you're going to maybe show all of your stuff. Now people are into a story, right? And that's what's helpful sometimes. And it doesn't have to be a Marvel movie kind of lots of tense action and lots of, the world is at stake. It's like, can I learn how to hit a stinger and show what happens, right? Like there's tension here. That's the other thing that you can do too during, right? Is talking about one of the best things that you can do in terms of like keeping people going is using the word but. Like, this is what you want to do, but, right? There's tension already just with that. People want to know what's next, what happens next. So then you do that again, and then you do another way to lead them on. The worst thing that you can do is just saying and this and this and this. It just kind of goes on, and people just kind of get lost, and then may just lose attention and stop watching your video for the most part. So that's one way. The other thing to do is definitely like start doing some attention resets, and this just like it's probably more so with editing for the most part towards the end, but like zooming in or zooming out on your frame, not necessarily like during, but like just cropping in or cropping out just a little bit to like reset attention, or changing the angle of the camera, or having some text pop up on the screen. It's amazing. I never noticed this before, but like when you watch TV, how many times the camera angle changes to a different person, or they zoom in or they zoom out or they show something else. It happens so much. You don't notice it when you're watching TV and if you're not paying attention to it. But once you do, like next time you like watch a TV show, watch it how much that happens. it happens. There's so many within 10 seconds. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I have noticed it recently because I'm trying to pay attention to it. And even now, it looks like the Reels and the TikToks, people who are successful in it will purposefully like put like a glimmer or like a flash in the screen, but they continue to talk. Meaning like they might just be talking like me, but there's only maybe 4 seconds of talk. So it would be me saying like, do you know what happened in 2018? And then there's like a quick flash on the screen. And then it's the person continuing to talk, but it looks like it's breaking up the conversation, right? It looks like I'm watching this in little 4 and 5 second clips. And there's just something that goes on with our brain, right? Mm-hmm. Where we're more likely, rather than stare at that person talking the whole time, for them to break it down. It's like me watching, if I'm watching a 2-minute video, it's like me watching, I don't know, like 60 small little clips, as opposed to just a 2-minute video.
Yeah. So one of the things that you can do, like as a trainer, and what I was doing with my golf fitness channel, and to go back to like your example with the stinger, let's say you're making this video, right, showing people how to hit one, or you learning one, have some B-roll. And B-roll is technically what you put on top of your A-roll when you're editing, but that's what gets seen on the screen. So if you're talking in your A-roll, describing what you're doing, but you have B-roll on top of it, the B-roll is what will be shown, but your A-roll will still be kind of what's heard. So what you could be doing, right, is having you talking about how you were struggling to hit this, right, and you're videoing yourself just like talking head like this, but then it goes to you at the driving range, right, and you have different angles of you hitting video. Maybe it's sped up just a little bit to like not be super slow, something along those lines. But that again just creates a new thing in our minds and just allows us to pay attention for longer.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think going back and forth too between the A roll and the B roll, and having different versions of the B roll is important. It's gonna keep us connected to the video, watching that go on. And now that takes a little bit of time to be able to edit that way in different programs. I want to get into that. I'm going to see what programs you use. I use for my video editing a program called Camtasia. It's very simple, and that's why I recommend it to some people who don't have like a video editing background and just want to learn quicker. Now, it doesn't have as many features as like the high-level Adobe programs, but again, it's simple. So you have to, just like anything else in life, you have to weigh out, like, do I want to learn this faster, or do I want to have the best version of these things? But what programs do you use, and what would you recommend to someone?
Yeah, I would first of all recommend the program that you know and can use the best is the one you use.
Yeah.
I started off using iMovie, which is probably the equivalent to Camtasia. I'm pretty sure Camtasia is free. iMovie's free. It comes with any Apple product, comes with your phone. It's very bare bones and basic. You're very limited with what you can do, but it gets the job done, honestly. And it's very simple, quick and easy. I shouldn't say easy, but relatively easy to learn in comparison to more of these high-level editors, which is like Adobe Premiere, Final Cut Pro. I use DaVinci Resolve for my editor. It's a free software, but has the capabilities of like Adobe Premiere. And I didn't know how to edit before I started doing this. Like I knew a little bit, very bare bones, like it was all iMovie for the most part. And I just learned how to do stuff. And I watch YouTube videos on how to do things in DaVinci Resolve. And same thing happened when I was watching and learning doing iMovie. Like I just watched videos of learning how to do it. That's why I got so good at it, because I tried to get better at it, just like with anything else. In terms of like thumbnail creation, I just use Canva. Most people know what that is. It's free. I have the paid version. It's not that costly. It's really helpful to help remove backgrounds for the most part. That's really the main thing that I pay for.
I have a question about that because, and this is a less technical question, but is creativity dead? It seems to me that thumbnails, videos, TikToks, virality, whatever you're doing, YouTube, I don't actually have to be creative. I just find out who's trending and I make the same exact video but put my face on it. Am I wrong? Convince me I'm wrong.
You're not wrong for the most part, I would say. There are really no new ideas if you think about it, for the most part. In reality, most things are just recycled with a little bit of a new twist on it, which is probably the way to go. Because if you're going to come up with something totally new, it better be really good or it's probably going to suck, to be honest. I don't think you don't want to copy people, right? You can use the same kind of style, kind of see what's working for them, but still put your spin on it. Just copying someone is really not the way to go. Like if you try to be, we'll go back to Mr. Beast here and do what he does. And for those of you who don't know, he does like crazy things. Like he recreated Squid Game, and basically recreated the whole game and had people go through it. He actually spent more money doing his video than what Squid Game spent to actually like produce all of their whole show, right? Which is crazy. So like if you started to do what he did, which is not possible at this point, but like you're not new, it's not novel. People are gonna be like, you're just copying Mr. Beast. It's not, what are you doing, right? But find the styles that work in your niche for the most part. And it doesn't have to be, again, I wouldn't copy him, but try to be close to it. It doesn't have to be totally novel or new, but put your spin on it, right? Like I highly recommend going to quote unquote competitors and seeing what they're doing, right? Like what's doing well, what's a hot topic for them. Maybe you can talk about it. Listen to the video, say like, hey, they didn't really expand upon this. I can talk about that. One of my biggest ways, if you're out of content on YouTube for the most part, and don't know what to do, is like watch a competitor's video that did well, scroll through the comments. People are asking questions all the time that either that person didn't answer or didn't make another video about. There's a video for you right there.
So true. I never really thought of that, but there's so many times you see people, again, I go back to the only videos that I watch on YouTube, which are golf videos, where someone asks like, hey, how do you compare, these new Cobras to the 2018 version of those Cobras, right? And they don't ask questions like that. It's like, okay, well, there's your video comparing the 2018 Cobra Forge Tex to the 2022 Cobra Forge Tex. Which one should you buy? Is there any difference in them?
And
right?
That's a great video. Like, not to cut you off, but like I already envisioned the thumbnail, right? Like you have 4 irons to the left of whatever the 2018 version, 4 irons to the right, and you just have Cobra, whatever the name of the irons are, and then a versus like with a split down the middle. People are going to be interested in that.
Yeah, and there's so many options for you to do that in all things. And I do think, speaking on that, I just wanted to touch on this and see what you think also, is that it doesn't always have to be informational. If people start to trust you, you could also do more of like your take on what it is, as opposed to like teaching, right? Those are, I don't know how, I'm not using the proper, parlance here, but like me teaching you how to, again, hit a stinger would be the equivalent in the fitness world of like me teaching you how to do the perfect hinge motion, right? But I can also just get like 2 different kinds of, let's say, hex bars. And I could be like, this is the reason I use the Titan hex bar over the whatever hex bar, over the, because I believe the Titan hex bar has better grips and the threading is better and I can step in it easier. And I'm explaining to you like it's like a product review of some sort. And I think there's a lot of room for that in the fitness world.
Yeah, I think, a lot of times, like you're saying, maybe we get bogged down with providing just information for the most part, of saying like, let me show you how to hip hinge properly, or these are the 3 best exercises if you want to grow your glutes or your biceps, whatever it is, right? Which are great videos. I'm not saying don't make those, but there are a lot of other ideas that you can do that change you up too, from people that are just doing those types of videos, where, like you said, now you give your take on that product review, or you give your take on, these lifters in terms of like shoes, or the best shoe that you like to use for running or, training, whatever it might be, right? Like give your take on them. And you may not be comparing. You're just saying like, hey, I bought these new shoes and, that are maybe popular. And you're like, I used them and I personally think that they suck. And here's why, right? Like people, eventually that may not be a huge thing, but like, if you think about it, you're creating what I would call maybe more community content. You're giving more people a chance to learn about you, which is really what matters most, right? Like people are going to connect with you, not necessarily your channel. It's more about you. They want to learn about you and who you are. And I'm sure in that kind of video, you're going to share more about yourself, right? And same thing, like you can talk about, this is one thing that I would do on my golf channel. You kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, but like you can talk about trending topics within your niche. So to stick with the golf fitness niche, right? Like the Masters just happened this weekend. It's a major championship that occurs every single year. John Rahm won. He's well known he works with TPI. He's well known that he's a big, strong hitter. People are going to be searching Masters. People are going to be searching John Rahm over, the next week, probably. They're going to be searching what equipment he used, what clothes he wears, what was his fitness routine that helped him win a major championship. If you can be more timely on stuff like this, it can be really helpful. Obviously with this isn't the best example, but to go towards like, let's talk about CrossFit Open happens every year. The workouts come out. You can literally talk about what you can do to prepare, to strategize what you did, what you didn't do. If you can find those kinds of things too in your niche, whatever it is, those like major events, you can always like one, create content around that, but now you have content when it comes out every year or semi-annually, whenever it is, right?
Yeah. I was just thinking like a great thumbnail would be like, what wedges did, or like wedges that Ram used to win the 2023 Masters. And it's like him holding up the wedge, but like the wedge is blacked out, or there's like a white thing over it. So you can't see the head of the wedge. You have to click into the video to see that he's using the Callaway Jaws wedges or whatever. Right. So like there's so many things you can do to continue trending. And I also think just to stay on this topic, it seems to be important to throw a few things at the wall and see what sticks. Right. So if you're a fitness professional, and again, you love showing certain yoga poses, or you love talking about the proper way to get in a hinge, fine, make some of those videos. But then you do a video on like, everyone loves the tank tops you wear. And you're like, oh, this is how I style my own tank top. I get it from this brand, but I cut this off and I tie this together and I do this. And that video has like 1,000 more views than the other one. Well, guess what? Like, again, you don't create a market. You find out what the market dictates and then you adjust accordingly. Maybe you need to start making more of those videos. So I think it's good to have 3 or 4 or 5 different like kinds of videos and then see which ones are doing well. Use those metrics you talked about to say, hey, listen, like I can still do these other videos that I enjoy doing. I'm still going to show people how to hip hinge or do my favorite yoga movement. But ultimately, if I want to gain a following, I also have to talk about my specialty t-shirts I make.
Yeah, exactly. I think, we think about there's only one way to make a video. And a lot of times, again, for fitness people who are educating, it's you standing in a gym or at your house, whatever it is, and you're just educating on whatever the topic may be, right? Think about doing what people would consider like a vlog style, right? Where you're holding the camera and walking around, showing people throughout your day. But like, it doesn't have to be throughout the day. You could go to, take your camera and go to a park, right? And say like, hey, sometimes you want to get outside and work out and you don't have any equipment or access to any, but a lot of times parks do. And I just want to show you what I would do if I was, wanted to go to a park and work out, right? Like now you're providing a different spin on something. You're creating a change, right? And this is where maybe going back to your creativity question comes in, right? Like using those elements of other types of videos. Again, when you think about a vlogger, you think about like someone who talks about fashion or, just talking about their day for the most part. But like you're taking that style of video and now putting it in your niche with what you do, and really kind of changing it up. Are people probably doing that? Probably. I mean, I'm sure that's not like a novel idea that I just came up with, but there's an option for you and it changes things up for you. One, and if people like that kind of style that you do, like you said, you got to kind of go into that for the most part. Like having those different types of things is going to be helpful to help you figure out, one, what you like and don't like to do, but two, kind of what resonates with the audience. And if, like you said, you don't have to give up your other ways of videos that you like to make, but if this is what's kind of trending and what people kind of seem to connect with you, you got to, and if you want to grow on YouTube and grow that following, you should probably lean into it.
Joe, this has been fantastic information. Before you go ahead and tell us about where we can find you best, whether that's YouTube or Instagram or handles, or maybe reaching out directly for your email, I just want to say that you make fantastic videos, especially for people who want to learn more about YouTube. They're quick, they're very digestible, they're easy. People can just follow along and look at them. So if anyone wants to find out more, we have not gone over half of what you need to do to be successful on YouTube. Joe did a really good job of explaining everything, but ultimately, right, he's still learning, he's still growing. And that's what social media is, right? It's ever evolving, it's ever changing, you're trying out new things. So I really recommend following Joe and watching the videos and starting your footprint on YouTube if you don't have it, or advancing your YouTube footprint if you're just starting out and you're not being successful. But tell us where the audience can find you via those socials, but also where they can reach out to you directly with questions.
Sure. Thanks so much for the compliment, Steve. I appreciate that. I always try to give out tactical advice and make it as simple as possible. Probably the easiest way to reach out to me, the only place that I give like YouTube education, is on Instagram, and I am at DocJoeO on Instagram. You can reach out to me via email at joe@puredrivephysio.com.
Awesome. Easy enough. My guest today has been Joe O. Thank you so much for joining the TrulyFit Podcast.
Thanks, Steve.